I returned to my childhood home a few days after my mother passed away. I had been out of town, working on a construction site. I got the call, and it shook me to my core. I wasn't good at dealing with grief, but I had to find a way through it. My plan was simple: renovate the old house and sell it. I thought it would help me leave behind painful memories. The truth is, that house never left my mind. As I got to the front steps, the porch creaked under my feet. It smelled old, like things had been left to rot. I set my tools down and stepped inside. The quiet felt heavy. Maybe that's why I felt uneasy. I just wanted to start. That first night, I heard muffled voices echo through the empty halls. I thought maybe it was the house settling, or my tired mind playing tricks on me. But something deep inside felt wrong. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. The pit in my stomach wouldn't go away. The next day, I was in the kitchen, mapping out a plan for renovations. I flipped on the light, but the bulb flickered and died. I switched it on again, and it flickered once more. A chill ran down my spine. The wiring was old, sure, but I could feel something else in the air. I wasn't alone here. As the days wore on, things just got weirder. Dark stains appeared on the walls, and I was certain they weren't there before. I could have sworn I had packed up my mother's belongings, but they kept showing up in different spots. Her old photos were flipped face down, and her favorite chair had moved a few feet from where I remembered it. I felt the prickling sense that someone was watching me. I'd often stop and look over my shoulder. Deep down, I started to wonder if my mother's spirit was trying to reach out. Maybe it was just my mind working overtime. I convinced myself it was stress, but the walls felt closing, like the air was thickening around me. I could hear creaks more clearly at night, and shadows flickered on the walls. One night, after a long day of construction, I sat on the steps of the porch. The shadows danced again, and a soft voice called my name. I jumped to my feet. There had to be someone behind me. I turned quickly, but nothing was there. In that moment, my heart was racing. I thought back to when I wished for my mother to just go away. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The house didn't feel right. It felt like darkness was clinging to the walls, whispering secrets meant only for me. Something was here. It had been waiting. I couldn't figure it out, but whatever it was, I wasn't alone anymore. The house was alive, and it remembered. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. A strange urgency filled me. I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and decided to call my childhood friend Mark. We had lost touch over the years, but I hoped he might know something. "Hey, Mark, it's me," I said when he picked up. "I just came back home. I think there's something strange going on in my old house." "What do you mean strange?" he asked, sounding skeptical. I hesitated. "I know it sounds crazy, but I keep hearing whispers and finding things moved. It feels like, I don't know, like the house is alive." He paused before replying. "You remember that time when we used to talk about the legends around your place? The weird stuff that happened?" My stomach sank. I remembered those stories. The ghost that haunted the house after someone had died. I didn't want to think about it, but the memories surfaced. I felt trapped by what he was hinting at. "Yeah, I remember," I said slowly. "But those were just stories, right?" "Maybe," he said, his voice low. "But I don't think it's just you. I heard some locals talking. They said your mom had something going on, something she never told you." "What do you mean?" I asked, panic crawling in my veins. "I don't really know, just that she was involved in some stuff. People thought it was weird." Mark didn't elaborate. I could hear the hint of uncertainty in his tone. I finished the call, my heart pounding. I thought I had just needed to fix the house, but now it felt like I had stirred something up. I leaned against the kitchen counter, feeling the coldness of the tile beneath my palm. Deciding to confront the issues head-on, I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the basement. The door creaked as I pulled it open, releasing a wave of musty air. I stepped down the stairs, the beam of light flickering in the darkness. The basement had always felt off to me. Darkness clung to the corners like it held secrets. I scanned the room, and then something caught my eye. A cardboard box sat in the far corner, dusty and untouched. I walked over to it, adrenaline coursing through me. As I pushed the box, it creaked open, revealing papers stacked messily inside. Old photographs, letters, and what looked like a diary. My hands trembled as I sifted through it. And that's when I saw it, a faded picture of my mother. But she was not alone. Standing beside her was a man with dark eyes and a sinister smile. A chill ran down my spine. Who was he? That wasn't anyone I recognized. What was my mother involved in? Suddenly the lights flickered and the basement temperature dropped. My breath fogged in the air. I felt something shift behind me. I spun around, but the darkness swallowed everything. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. No answer, just that weight in the air. I realized then that whatever was in this house wasn't just memories, it was a warning, and it was not done with me yet. I stood frozen in the basement, heart racing, the darkness pressing in around me. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but with each passing second, that explanation felt weaker. I shined my flashlight toward the corners, searching for any sign of movement. The air felt charged, almost electric. I took a deep breath and decided to keep going, pushing more of the box's contents aside. The diary slid partially out. It was bound in frayed leather, worn from years of neglect. I opened it carefully, and the first page had my mother's looping handwriting. It began with mundane details, daily life, grocery lists, but then the entries shifted. The date on the next one caught my eye. It was just a few weeks before my father passed away. She wrote about feeling watched and mentioned strange noises at night. I shuddered as I read the words, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. I flipped further into the diary. There were references to rituals and names of people I didn't recognize, all scrawled hastily as if she feared someone might see them. My palms grew clammy as I read about the entity and her attempts to banish it. It sounded like something out of a horror movie, but it was my mother's life. Then a shiver ran through me as I read an entry titled, "The Warning." My heart pounded as she described a shadowy figure whispering her name, urging her to continue her work. She mentioned a threat, something irreversible if she failed. I dropped the diary, overwhelmed. I didn't understand what she had been involved in. Just then, a loud crash echoed from above. Panic surged through me and I quickly closed the box, heart pounding in my ears. I needed to get upstairs. Whatever was happening felt all too real. As I rushed up the stairs, the darkness felt heavier, pushing against me. I reached the door but hesitated. What if I wasn't alone? I turned back, shining my light into the basement. I could still feel the restless energy around me. I slipped out, carefully shutting the door behind me. As I crossed the threshold into the kitchen, I froze. The air was still, but it felt different. I noticed that the photo of my mother with that man was no longer on the counter. My breath caught in my throat. Had I misplaced it? Before I could dwell on it, I heard a faint whisper from the living room. It called out softly, almost sweetly, my name. "Come here." Fear coursed through me, but I felt an inexplicable pull toward the sound. I took a cautious step forward, peering into the dimly lit room. The curtains were drawn tight, and shadows danced in the corners. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, my heart racing as curiosity battled with fear. Then everything went black. The power shut off, plunging me into darkness. An urgent whisper followed, more insistent this time. "You have to listen." I felt a chill run down my spine as the darkness engulfed me completely. I stumbled backward, my instincts screaming at me to get away. In the overwhelming blackness, I strained to listen for any signs of life. The whisper faded, and I was left with the rapid sound of my own breathing, the only thing reassuring me that I was still here, still alive. I fumbled for my phone in my pocket. I needed light, needed to see if the shadows lurking in the corners had taken shape beyond my mind's eye. I quickly turned on the flashlight app, feeling the dim glow push against the darkness. The room came into view, revealing nothing more than the familiar contours of my home. But something felt wrong. My heart raced as I scanned the space. The furniture was in its usual place, but the air felt thick, almost suffocating. I stepped deeper into the living room, the light flickering with uncertainty. That's when I saw it. A dark figure, more shadow than substance, standing in the corner. My breath hitched. I blinked, convinced my eyes were playing tricks. The moment I focused on it, it shifted slightly as if it sensed my gaze. A chill crawled up my spine. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaking. No reply came, only the oppressive silence wrapping around me. I felt a swell of anger mixed with fear. After everything, was I really going to let some ghostly figure scare me? But deep down, a voice whispered that this wasn't just a figment of my imagination. This was reality. I backed away slowly, not wanting to take my eyes off the figure. It remained still, but I could feel a presence, a pressure building in the air between us. I nearly turned to run when the lights flickered back on, illuminating the room with a harsh glow. But in the flash of brightness, the figure was gone. Was it just an illusion, or had it known I was afraid? I steadied myself against the arm of the couch, forcing my heart to slow. Just breathe. The diary, the words I had read. It all felt connected. My mother had mentioned a presence, a warning, something lurking just beyond reach. Suddenly I remembered something else from her diary. A name. I hurried back to the box in the basement, my pulse quickening again at the thought. I rifled through it, heart pounding as I searched for the diary. I needed answers, needed to understand what exactly my mother had been involved with. After searching frantically, I found the diary lodged under a few old photos. Quickly flicking through the pages, I hesitated on one half-torn sheet that hadn't caught my attention before. It was a name, along with an address scrawled beneath it. My mind raced. What if this was the key? I felt a mix of dread and determination. I couldn't ignore this. I had to go there. But as I closed the diary, a sudden noise echoed from the hallway, a low, guttural growl that resonated through the house. I froze again, fear solidifying around me. Whatever was in this house was closer than I had thought. I needed to leave, to escape and uncover the truth. But first, I had to confront whatever was waiting just outside my line of sight. I reached for the light switch but hesitated, feeling like I might draw the attention of whatever was lurking. My heart felt like it skipped a beat when the growl rumbled again, louder this time. It resonated in my chest, a primal warning that sent cold fingers creeping down my spine. I had to think. The name in the diary felt like a lifeline, a promise of answers. But could I really just walk up to some stranger's home based on a few cryptic scribbles? It didn't matter. I couldn't stay here, not with whatever that was lurking in the shadows. I took a deep breath and stepped away from the couch, the floor creaking under my weight. My feet, as though not under my control, carried me toward the hallway where the growl emanated from. Each step felt like a test of my resolve, a push against the fear gripping me. "Show yourself," I shouted, trying to sound brave, but my voice cracked at the end. The house seemed to absorb my words, leaving me even more isolated. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the kitchen, startling me. I jumped and spun around. What if it was more than just a shadow? I turned off my phone, the light disappearing, plunging me back into darkness. I had to move quickly. Fumbling for the doorknob, I felt the iron chill of metal against my palm. Before I could second-guess myself, I pulled the door open and stepped outside into the night. The moon hung low, casting a ghostly glow over the yard. The stillness was eerie. It felt wrong. I scanned the tree line beyond my fence, feeling like eyes were watching me from the depths. I had to focus. I forced myself to remember the address. It was time to see if those words meant something real. With each step I took toward my car, I glanced back at my house. It felt wrong to leave it behind when this felt like a confrontation, but I couldn't let fear freeze me anymore. I had to know what was going on. The drive felt too quiet. The streets were empty, shadows stretching across the pavement. As I drove, I kicked myself for not bringing anyone with me. I didn't even know what I would find at the address. What if it was just a dead end? What if it was worse? Finally, I arrived at the location. A small house loomed in front of me, draped in shadows like my own place. The windows, dark and empty, gave no hint of life inside. I parked and stepped outside, the night air heavy with tension. This was it. I was about to confront the unknown. As I approached the front door, my chest tightened. I knocked, the sound echoing, sharp in the silence. But nobody answered. I turned to leave, disappointment settling in my stomach, when a sudden rustling caught my attention. A figure emerged from the side of the house, tall and unmoving, just like the shadow in my living room. I blinked in shock. Then it spoke. "Did you come for me?" The voice sent chills down my spine. It wasn't just the figure's appearance, it was the familiarity of the tone. I knew that voice. Before I could react, everything went black. When I came to, it was like waking from a nightmare I couldn't fully remember. The world spun slowly, the edges of my vision fuzzy and unsteady. I blinked, and a dim light flooded back into focus. I was in a small, cluttered room. The air was thick, almost tangible with a strange scent, like damp wood and something else I couldn't quite place. I sat up, my heart racing. Adrenaline surged through me as I swung my legs over the side of what felt like a bed, lumpy and worn. The memories of the figure flooded back, and I felt a cold sweat trickle down my back. What had happened? Where was I? "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. There was no response. Panic began to rise. I stood up too quickly, my head spinning again. I steadied myself and took in my surroundings. The room was dark, illuminated only by a flickering bulb overhead. A single window was partially covered with newspaper, allowing only a sliver of moonlight to creep in. Then I noticed a familiar object sitting on a desk in the corner. A diary. My diary. The one that had set me on this insane path. I rushed over, my fingers grazing the worn leather cover. It felt like a lifeline in the chaos. I flipped it open, searching for the name that had haunted my thoughts. The pages turned easily, each one filled with my handwriting, but then I stopped. There, jotted messily in ink, was a new entry. "The truth is buried deeper than you think. Find him. Free him." A chill ran through me. Had I written this? Or had someone else? My heart pounded, fear twisting within me. I had to get out of here. I turned to leave the room, but as I reached for the door, it swung open violently. The figure stood in the threshold, backlit by the dim corridor light. His face was obscured, but I recognized the shape, the familiar tone of his voice. "You shouldn't have come here." His words twisted the air. "You'll only bring more danger." "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" "I wanted to protect you," he said, stepping closer. My instincts screamed to back away, but something about his tone held me still. There was a strange mix of fear and desperation in his eyes, an echo of a past I couldn't fully understand. Then he pointed to the wall behind me. "You need to see this." I hesitated, then turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. Scrawled across the wall in dark red paint were words that made my skin prickle. "He lives in your fear." "What does that mean?" I asked, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. Before he could answer, there was a loud crash from another room, shaking the walls. Panic ricocheted inside me. Whatever was happening had just escalated. "Run!" he shouted, shoving me toward the door. But I hesitated, fear rooting me in place. "Please just tell me what's going on." He opened his mouth to speak, but suddenly everything around us went dark again. Panic clawed at my chest as I felt something brush past me, cold and sharp. "Get out!" echoed in my mind, and at that moment I knew. Whatever was hiding in the shadows was not done with me yet. I stumbled backward as the darkness enveloped us, my heart racing. Fear gripped me tightly, making it hard to breathe. The room was alive with noise, whispers weaving through the shadows, sharp sounds skittering across the floor like frantic footsteps. "Stay close," the figure commanded. I was paralyzed, caught between flight and fight. But instead of obeying him, I turned, crashing into the doorframe as I scrambled to the hallway. I pushed through the door, the flickering light from the corridor casting long shadows. I heard him calling my name, but the sounds of the dark were louder, almost mocking. Teeth gritted, I ran, my feet pounding against the wooden floor. My lungs burned, and I could feel panic rising as I raced away from the clutches of that darkness. Out into the corridor, I nearly slipped on something slick. I glanced down. Blood. My stomach twisted. Was it mine? I didn't have time to check. I shoved myself against the wall, hoping it would shield me from whatever lurked behind. "Where are you?" I whispered to the emptiness, wishing I knew where I was going. My eyes darted around, scanning for an exit. All I found were more doors, each one closed, eerily still, as if they also held secrets just waiting to be uncovered. The figure appeared at the end of the hallway, his face still hidden in shadow. "This way," he urged, pointing towards a door that was slightly ajar, light spilling out like a beacon. I hesitated. "What's going on? Who are you?" But he just shook his head. "No time. They're coming, trust me." Without another word, I stumbled toward him. The floor beneath my feet seemed to tremble, sending vibrations through my bones. It felt like the house itself was alive, watching, waiting. I hesitated at the door, my hand brushing against the knob. "What if it's a trap?" I asked, doubt swirling in my mind. "Would I lead you into a trap?" he asked, his voice softer now, tinged with urgency. "Please, you have to believe me." "What do I have to believe?" I protested, but something in his eyes spoke volumes. I had no choice. I twisted the knob and stepped inside. The room was small, littered with papers and strange artifacts that flickered in the light of a single lamp. My eyes landed on a photo taped to the wall. Me, standing beside a child who looked familiar, but who I couldn't place. I felt a tug at my memory. "Do you remember him?" he asked, pointing toward the photo. "No, I don't," I stammered, confusion mixing with fear. "Then you have to find out. It's the only way," he said, desperation rising in his voice. Just as I was about to ask him what he meant, the door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed like a gunshot, and I spun around, panic overwhelming me. "Let me out!" I shouted, pounding on the door, but it felt solid, unyielding. I turned back to him, but the fear in his eyes mirrored my own. "I should have told you the truth sooner," he said, his voice shaking. "You have to face it, before it's too late." Then everything went dark again. A cold wind swept through the room, and I gasped as the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a storm. I felt pressure against my chest as if the shadows were closing in, and all I could think was, there was no going back now. I stood frozen in that room, surrounded by darkness and the weight of the whispered voices. The cold wind whipped around me, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. My heart thundered in my chest as I took a cautious step back, desperate to find a way out. "Can you hear them?" he asked, his voice shaking me from my fear. I turned to him, wide-eyed, feeling the intensity of the moment wash over us. "They're coming for you." "Who?" I whispered, my throat dry. "What do you mean?" "Confusion will only make it worse," he replied, urgency creeping into his tone. "You have to remember, it's the key." That word, remember, echoed in my mind. I wanted to shout at him for vague answers, but a flicker of recognition sparked deep within me. I needed to fight through the fog. I scanned the cluttered room again, searching for any clues, anything that would help me piece together the fragments of my memory. Something caught my eye on the table, a small dust-covered box. I made my way toward it, heart racing with trepidation. The box was a deep mahogany, the finish worn with age. I reached out and opened it, revealing a collection of old trinkets, a broken toy, a silver locket, and a crumpled piece of paper. I unfolded the paper carefully. It was a letter, written in a shaky hand. My breath hitched as I read the first line. "If anything happens to me, know that I love you. Find him." My mind churned, trying to connect the dots. "Who?" I breathed. The figure beside me shifted, his face still obscured. "Your brother," he said, his voice dropping. "From years ago." Panic surged through me. I never had a brother, at least I don't remember. The whispers intensified, becoming a chorus, drowning out my thoughts. It felt like the walls were closing in. "Focus," he commanded, reaching out to grab my arm. "Remember why you're here. Remember what you're looking for." His grip was firm, a lifeline in the chaos. I shut my eyes tightly, willing the memories to come. I saw flashes. A backyard, laughter, a dark figure looming in the background. Then, pain. Something terrible had happened. I could feel it in my bones, like an anchor dragging me down. That's when I felt it. A presence, cold and suffocating, creeping closer from the shadows. I opened my eyes, and my heart dropped. The room dimmed further, the light from the lamp flickering madly as if warning me. "Get ready," he said, and then I heard it, a low growl from the corner, a sound that sent chills racing down my spine. "Someone's here," I whispered, fear flooding my veins. I wanted to run, but my legs felt glued to the spot. I glanced back at the door, but it remained closed, sealed against whatever horror lurked within. A shadow loomed, darker than the darkness surrounding us. "They've come for you," the figure whispered, eyes wide with dread. Suddenly the door burst open, and I was face to face with the nightmare I had tried to escape. I stumbled back, my heart racing. The figure stood there, drenched in shadows but unmistakably human. It wore a thin, cracked grin that sent bile rising in my throat. "Well, well, what do we have here?" it sneered, eyes flickering with cruel amusement. "Stay back!" I yelled, though my voice trembled. I grabbed the edge of the table for support, the wood biting into my palms. I could feel the energy shifting, drowning me in a suffocating weight of dread. "Did you really think you could hide forever?" it taunted, stepping closer. I recognized a glimmer of something familiar in its features, something that made my blood run cold. "Who are you?" I choked out, desperate to hold on to my fading strength. "Isn't it obvious?" It laughed, a low, grating sound that made my skin crawl. "I'm your past, and I've come to collect." The air grew thick, each breath straining against an invisible force. I looked at the figure beside me, but he was just as much a shadow as the one before me. "We need to get out of here," I whispered urgently, feeling the panic claw at my insides. He shook his head, his expression grave. "You can't escape until you confront it. You have to remember." The menace loomed closer, towering just above me. "Remember what?" "All I see is darkness," I screamed, feeling my sanity hang by a thread. The shadows twisted, and I could hear the whispers, clearer now. Secrets, regrets, and fears swirling around me like a storm. "Remember your brother," he urged. "You've locked him away. Find him." A memory sparked. A flicker of blue kites flying high in the sky, then the sound of glass shattering. I clutched my head, pain bursting through my skull. "No, I won't remember." "Then I shall have to remind you." The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing a thin scar running down its left eye. "You thought you could forget, but I am here to remind you of your failure." I backed away until I hit the wall, the rough surface digging into my back. "Failure?" I echoed, the word heavy on my tongue. The fear gripped me as fragments of a memory floated to the surface. A stormy night, a scream, and then silence. 8 years ago, I murmured, the realization washing over me. I wasn't just running from the past. I was the architect of my own nightmares. The sinister figure grinned wider, satisfaction radiating from its presence. "After all this time, you finally understand. It's always been about him." "About who?" I gasped, feeling the room closing in. "Time's almost up. You have one chance," the figure hissed. "Choose wisely." Just as my heart sank, the lights flickered and went out entirely. Darkness swallowed me whole, and I braced myself, terrified of what was to come next. Then came the sound. A muffled yell far away, yet painfully familiar. "Help! Please, someone help!" My world spun. I couldn't think, I had to act. But where would I even start? I blinked into the overwhelming darkness, the muffled cry reverberating through the room like a haunting echo. It felt as if time stopped, making each heartbeat an eternity. I needed to fight, to act, but confusion gripped me. The cries continued, urgent and filled with fear, like a talisman that pierced through the overwhelming silence. "Do you hear it?" the figure beside me asked, urgency slicing through the murky air. His tone was graver now, and I could sense an urgency that spurred me into movement. "Yes, but what do I do?" I shouted, panic flooding my voice. "Find him! He's the key!" he said, the desperation palpable. I knew instinctively he meant my brother, the vague memories swirling in my mind, compelling me to dig deeper. But how? The figure that had been haunting me loomed close, merging with the darkness, feeding off my fear. Each cry echoed like a drum, driving me toward a decision. Without thought, I started moving toward the sound, focusing on the tug at the edge of my memory. Everything else melted away. I could feel the weight of the darkness behind me, but the urgency within me propelled me forward. "Wait," the other figure called out, but I didn't stop. I rounded through the swirling shadows, each step igniting memories, each cry forcing me to confront what I had tried to forget. I stumbled blindly through the darkness, but I could sense I was getting closer to the source, could feel its warmth even in the desolation. I reached out and touched a wall, cold and unyielding. "Where are you?" I cried desperately. A shudder ran through the fabric of reality as the shadows around me shifted. A light flickered in the distance, a shimmer of clarity against the blackened void. With each step toward it, the cries grew louder, morphing into a desperate plea. I needed to break free of this cycle. I needed to confront whatever awaited me there. I stepped into the beam of light, heart pounding, and found myself standing in a small chamber that felt strangely familiar. My surroundings were draped in eerie silence, echoing with dread. The light illuminated the remnants of memories painted on the walls, old photographs, children's toys, a stack of forgotten letters. Then I saw him, a figure kneeling in the corner, his head buried in his hands, shaking as though lost in despair. My brother. An ache filled me, a well of emotion surging. "Please, I'm here. I've come for you," I shouted, trying to breach the abyss between us. He looked up, his eyes wide with fear and recognition. You remembered?" His voice cracked like glass, a reflection of years spent in silence and shadows. "Yes, I'm here to save you." As I stepped closer, I felt the walls tremble. The dark figure loomed again, its presence suffocating. "You really think you can just take him away? He belongs to me now," it taunted, a sinister smile stretching across its face. "No," I shouted, the sudden surge of defiance surprising even myself. "You can't have him." With a swiftness I didn't know I possessed, I reached out, grasping my brother's arm. The moment our skin connected, a ripple of light radiated from us, pushing back against the looming darkness. His eyes flashed with fear, but also hope, like a spark igniting. "Together," he said breathlessly. I felt the surge of something ancient and powerful flow through us, an energy that whispered of protection, of strength. But the dark figure pressed forward, shadows swirling in its wake. "You cannot escape it. You must face it," it hissed, venom lacing its words. Then, with all my strength, I shouted, "You have no power over us." The light intensified, bathing the chamber, and for a moment I could see clear paths in the darkness. I felt it, an opening, a chance. In the next instant we broke through, rushing past the shadows that clawed at us. The haunting figure shrieked, the timbre shrinking into the depths as if swallowed whole, the weight of the space turning lighter with every inch we gained. We stumbled into the hallway, breathless but free. I turned back to look at the chamber, heart pounding. The darkness still loomed, not gone, but retreating, waiting. Even in our victory, it felt like it was far from over. We rushed outside the small house, the night air rushing against us. The moon watched above, calm and full. I felt the weight of its gaze, the lingering echo of what we'd left behind. "Where do we go now?" I asked, genuinely lost. "We need to find a way to close that door," my brother replied, voice steady but laced with a hint of sorrow. "What if it never closes?" "We face it. Together, we figure it out." As we walked into the night, I realized that even though we had escaped the immediate threat, the haunting questions of our past lingered like shadows behind us. I had no answers, but for the first time, I felt the weight lift when I grasped his hand. My brother, my blood. Together, we would unravel the truth, whatever darkness awaited us next. And just like that, as we disappeared into the whispers of the night, I could sense a shadow peel away behind us, lurking, waiting for its moment. But for now, we moved forward, uncertain, but undeniably alive.